Good afternoon. Welcome to the opening session of Day 4 of A Map to the Door of No Return, a gathering. First, some housekeeping notes. We have arranged closed captioning for the webinar. If you would benefit from closed captioning, please bring your mouse to the bottom of the screen and select Live Transcript. This event is also being live streamed on our YouTube channel, and the link is available in the chat. We encourage you to use the hashtag #MapAt20 to share your reactions and comments on social media. We begin with marking the violent histories of where we are, with making note of and reminding us of the ongoing conflicts and contradictions of this land, this water, this air. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit River, and the nations of the Haudenosaunee. The meeting place of Toronto remains the home to Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. These Americas are built on violence and erasure, and we bring these histories with us. Those native to this land, Indigenous people from other territories, as well as white settlers by conquest, and those of us who have come here by force or otherwise as a result of slavery, colonialism, imperialism, and ongoing wars. When we enter any room, even or especially virtual rooms like this, we must bring these histories into view. This acknowledgement is particular to Toronto, the location of York University, and the host of A Map to the Door of No Return at 20, a gathering. But we are meeting virtually from countries around the world, each with their own history of conquest, white settler colonialism, slavery, imperialism, ongoing war. And we must acknowledge and bring those histories and presence into view. It is with this knowledge that we enter and meet here in the hopes of making a different world. I am so pleased to be able to introduce Alberta Whittle. Alberta, would you join me on screen? After the introduction, we will screen the film, What is a Better Life? After which Alberta and I will have a brief, unfortunately too brief, conversation. Alberta Whittle is an artist, researcher, and curator. She was awarded a Turner Bursary, the Frieze Artist Award, and a Henry Moore Foundation Artist Award in 2020. Alberta is a PhD candidate at Edinburgh College of Art and is a research associate at the University of Johannesburg. She's joining us, I think, from Glasgow. She was a Raw Academic Fellow at Raw Material in Dakar in 2018 and is the Margaret Tate Award winner for 2018-2019. Her creative practice is motivated by the desire to manifest self-compassion and collective care as key methods in battling anti-Blackness. She choreographs interactive installations using film, sculpture, and performance as site-specific artworks in public and private spaces. Alberta has exhibited and performed in various solo and group shows. There's a longer list on the website, but I'm going to give you a partial list, including at Jupiter Artland, Gothenburg Biennale, the Lisson Gallery, MIMA, Ramai Modern, Liverpool Biennale, Art London, the British Art Show, Glasgow International in 2021 and 2020, and at the Johannesburg Pavilion of the 56th Venice Biennale in 2015. Her work has been acquired for UK National Collections, the Scottish National Gallery Collections, Glasgow Museum Collections, and the Contemporary Art Research Collection at Edinburgh College of Art, amongst other private collections. Alberta is representing Scotland at the 59th Venice Biennale in 2022. And in the next couple of months, she will be sharing new work as part of the British Art Show 9, Life Between Islands, Caribbean British Art from 1950s to Now at Tate Britain. And I should say, if you are in Toronto, she has work at the AGO in Fragments of Memory, as well as Tate Britain, Sex Ecologies at Kunsthal, Trondheim, Norway. Alberta's writing has been published in Map Magazine, Visual Culture in Britain, Visual Studies, Art South Africa, and Critical Arts Academic Journal. And now I invite you to join us in watching What is a Better Life, after which Alberta and I will come back together and have a conversation. So now, what is a better life?
Never turn your back on the ocean was the counsel. Water is the first thing in my memory. The sea sounded like 1,000 secrets, all whispered at the same time. In the daytime, it was indistinguishable to me from air. It seemed to be made of the same substance which carried voices or smells, music or emotion. The water misted the air in a continuous fine spray. It insulated the place where we lived so much so that when you entered Guaya from the bend in the Mayaro Road, it felt like a surprise, a quiet, peaceful surprise. Right there at the bend, the sea sighed as at the end of a long journey. Guayguayera is where the sea came to rest. Steady yourself. A reunion is coming. With those unknown parts of yourself. That were forgotten under the ocean. Remember to soften. Remember to soften. Remember to soften. Release as much as you can on impact. Let the waves embrace you. be still, my darling.
Alberta, would you join me now? So I'm just going to say something and then I'm going to invite you to speak with us. I just want to thank you for such a beautiful work. It is so visually and sonically rich. We begin with sound and then with a hand moving a ring soldered to rock, and then the ocean in the back. And then we hear you reading from A Map to the Door of No Return. And then we also have this beautiful phrase that repeats, I think, 3 times: remember to soften. So I just want to put those things into the room and invite you to speak with us about um, what is a better life.
Thank you so much, Christina. I'd really like to also thank Dionne and York University and all of the staff that have gone behind the scenes to make this happen, as well as all of the speakers and artists. These questions about the score, the hand, but also, the visuals in terms of the color, they all came from a place when I was really reflecting so much on what it means to make work from an island. I was actually home in Barbados at the time, and the sea was very much under surveillance actually by the state because of COVID. The sea was inaccessible. Only within certain hours could you go and have a sea bath. And I found myself retreating and finding solace in Dionne's words and really trying to almost unpick what they meant for me when I started to think about the overwhelming grief of this particular moment that we're enmeshed in, but also how there's something in her words where John almost invites us collectively to really remember together, to encounter this grief that really weighs us down and almost start to unpick that And one of the things when I go about making my films is they're often with people I love. They're often very much with people I love. The person's hand who is opening up that kind of rusted chain is someone I love dearly. The words are from someone whose work I deeply admire. And I often try and think about how can we do this work of unlearning, but also encountering grief collectively, and also what is really possible in terms of really thinking about exercising ourselves. And for me, in this moment, when I thought of this phrase, what is a better life exercised in the middle? It was really about trying to think about humanity and how to seize my own humanity that I really feel has, systematically been erased by white supremacy. And so when I approached making this film from the perspective of an island, I also found myself recollecting my time on Gorée Island, which is a part of, A Map to the Door of No Return. And so the film really tries to collage these different moments of encounter between the enslaved and history. But also I found myself really thinking about that phrase, which is that empire at the end, and the fact that we're still sitting in this space of empire. So we also return to a tobacco plantation owner's home in Glasgow. And that space is visualized as the person in the sailor's suit dancing. That is a bell tower right at the top of the tobacco plantation owner's house. And that person, Divine, who is a really spectacular dancer based in Glasgow, I really wanted her to signify the opening up of this memory and also the sound of the bell. And so at the beginning, when you see the hand on holding that rusted chain and almost opening up history,
Yes.
Divine is really
Beautiful.
running with that, really running with it. And when I was creating the score, I wanted, especially at the beginning, there to be this sense of it's almost like a recognition of the mechanics of slavery and capitalism. But then towards the end, it drifts into sounds which are reflective of like trying to breathe underwater, so blowing bubbles, but also around like certain sonic register, like 85 hertz, which is meant to be something where you can almost like look at healing or the sound of a tuning fork. So I'm also trying to find ways to resolve this sense of this feeling of grief. And the fact that when I was making the film, and even on that shoot, we were under curfew to get to that particular site. It was really about like, how does one encounter this site that now one is literally being banished from? And the location.
And this sort of question of time, right?
Exactly.
And the sort of mixture of time, you say, the hand sort of almost opening up history. Well, then the sort of the sort of circumlocution, the circumnavigation of time, also in terms of, curfew and prohibition, interdiction from the sea, etc.
Absolutely. And the two women who were on that pair were actually in St. James, which is one of the spaces where the British apparently first arrived on Barbados. So I want to really bring that together with thinking about Gorée Island and also that door, and the water as being this door, and these intertidal zones where memory is really held, because the sea does become this witness to all
Well,
that
that's
is.
beautiful. Speaking about these intertidal zones where memory is held, what does Toni Morrison say? All water has a perfect memory. Um, and I was reminded when I saw that ring in that rock, which I'm assuming is from slavery, right? I was reminded of in Buku in Tobago, there are these huge sugar mills, and they are completely at this point, and they've been made up of like shells and stones, things which had to be carried from the water inland in order to build these sugar mills, which were the site of so much violence in slavery. But now they're falling apart, and there are trees that have completely grown in with them, and they're these kind of sort of magnificent, still living, haunted places, and so much of that sense of sort of still living, haunted And maybe I want to land, we have so little time, but I want to land on the question of the title, What is a Better Life? Which is kind
Mm,
of emphatic. It's not a question.
mm.
And so I want to say, could you speak some to that? It's a beautiful title, exorcised in the middle.
You know, the title actually comes from a conversation with a good friend who has children. And he was saying to me, you know, he didn't even know if he knew what freedom and would his children ever know what freedom was. And that really sat with me because I really found myself thinking about, well, what is this better life? Can I consider myself free? And the idea of an exorcism, it was really sitting with this idea of almost retrieving
Mm,
my own soul from captivity, but also how that can be linked to this unlearning.
mm-hmm,
And you know, as you say, it is a statement more than a question,
mm-hmm,
but it really does for me bring in the idea of who this work is being done with together, like those ideas of like togetherness and collectivity, but also these exchanges. And you
mm-hmm,
know, I think so much of my investigations is really founded by these encounters. And even though I do occasionally appear in my works, I wanted to explicitly in this film appear as a ghost. And so I am the figure that is shrouded
mm,
in silver in the intertidal zone, trying to
very,
approach memory, approach
mm-hmm,
what has been lost, but also to
mm-hmm.
try and think of how these things can be held in hospitality almost. And
Okay. No, no, go ahead.
but also there's a sense, and it's something which I was really only starting to unpick at the beginning, where I had been thinking about interspecies exchanges
Yes.
and how we can actually really learn in these exchanges about who are the decolonial agents. And
Mm-hmm,
I found
mm-hmm.
myself doing this research onto certain species like shipworms, as well as
Is
like
that
the
a shipworm in the very beginning that we see?
little shipworm, it's a little
Yes.
shipworm, but also how the settler colonialism basically tried to find ways to vanquish the shipworm because the
Mm,
shipworm actually defeated Columbus in St. Anne's in Jamaica, and he was
mm-hmm.
actually shipwrecked there. And so when a shipworm actually destroys a ship, it's called wrecking. And that idea of wreckage, I thought
Yeah.
was really, really incredibly moving because to think that actually the enslaved, even whilst they were being stolen and in captivity, these other species were also interceding possibly on their behalf. And that's really something which
Um,
is speculative, but
mm-hmm.
I
That's
found
beautiful. Mm-hmm.
very liberatory. And so
You know, mm,
one of the solutions ship engineers developed was actually to line ships in copper. And so the colors which I used to shift in the film are actually looking at the color of copper as it tarnishes.
oh, that's so. I was going to ask you about the colors, and so that's so beautiful. And we really only unfortunately have, I think, a minute left. But I want to say one thing and then invite you to say something in closing, which is you said wreckage, and I thought about also salvage and how
Mm,
salvage is both, is a contronym. It's both to um, both to I think both to sort of save and also isn't it to declare something as wreckage, right? Um, and so I was thinking about how wreckage and salvage are working in the film. That in a way, in that kind of join between past and present, that I think your work is always working. Um, so I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the sort of where your work makes how your work makes us attend to the present and the past, to breath, to water, to body. And I want to invite you to um, say something in closing.
I really like that idea of thinking about salvage and wreckage and what is overlooked, what
Mhm.
is very much overlooked in those moments of frottage when these things come together. And for me, I think, this is the moment where where hopefully we can slow down. And I think, more and more, I'm really hoping that, the works that, I see that I draw inspiration from, much like a map to the map to the door of no return, it's very much about slowing down so that we can really think through these ideas.
Thank you so much, Alberta. Hope to see you in person again soon.
Ooh, me
Have a
too.
have a wonderful rest of the day or
Thank you.
evening for you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Please, everybody, some housekeeping notes. Please join us at 2:45 for Arthur Jafa and Ronaldo Walcott, a film and then a conversation. And then at 3:30 for our closing conversation with Dionne Brand, Sadia Hartman, Mabel Wilson, Andrea Davis, Francoise Verger, moderated by Tina Camp. I look forward to seeing you then.